You know that feeling when you're scrolling
Yeah.
in your phone and you see something incredible,
Yeah.
like an amazing video, some unbelievable artwork, maybe big science news, and you just nothing.
Yeah, it just doesn't quite land.
Exactly. It's like our internal wow meter is kind of busted.
Well, that feeling, that sort of muted reaction, that's exactly what we're digging into today.
Okay.
We're doing a deep dive into why it seems like we've all become so, well, unimpressed. The material we've looked at, it covers a lot, the psychology, our culture, social factors,
Yeah.
all contributing to this lack of wonder.
Right. So the goal here for this deep dive is to really try and get to the bottom of it.
Right.
Why do we feel like this? We'll look at, the psychological angles, how things like social media and just being consumers play into it, this whole cultural thing around being cynical.
Yeah, that irony trend.
And even this kind of surprising idea that maybe talent itself can feel a bit unsettling.
Definitely. And we'll touch on history, too. Is this new or just louder now?
Ultimately, we want to understand why we're less impressed, but also maybe find ways back to feeling, genuine awe again, appreciation.
Sounds good. So, where should we start? Maybe inside our own heads.
Yeah, let's do that. The psychology first. It's interesting how our brains sometimes try to, protect us.
Right? Absolutely. Think about when you see someone achieving massive success. Let's take, say, Taylor Swift, just this ongoing phenomenon. For some people, witnessing that can actually stir up, well, discomfort.
Right. It makes you maybe compare yourself.
Exactly. It can challenge how you see your own life, your own achievements, or maybe what you feel you haven't achieved.
And that little voice pops up asking, okay, if they're up there, what does that mean about where I am? And instead of sitting with that feeling, which can be uncomfortable.
The ego jumps in.
Yeah. Puts up defenses. Start thinking, oh, well, her music's not that original, or it's just industry connections, or maybe anyone can do that with her platform.
And the key idea there is that those dismissive thoughts, they often serve a purpose protecting our sense of self-worth. It's easier sometimes to dismiss someone else than to face, our own stuff.
It ties into projection too, doesn't it? Like the things we criticize loudest in others might be things we secretly want or feel insecure about ourselves.
That's a really important point. Sometimes the harshest critic is someone who, deep down, wishes they were brave enough to create something meaningful themselves. It's easier to tear down.
Which leads us right into social media, because those platforms, they seem almost built to amplify these kinds of reactions, especially the negative ones.
Oh, definitely. The algorithms often reward conflict, right? What gets the most attention?
It's the controversial take, the snarky comment, the big argument. Friction seems to win.
And look, social media has given everyone a voice, which is powerful in many ways, but it's also really blurred the lines, hasn't it?
Blurred the lines how?
Between, say, informed critique, which is valuable, it helps us understand things better, and just emotional venting. Someone getting something off their chest without much substance behind it.
Right. Someone can just jump online, trash a really complex film or book, knowing basically nothing about how it was made or what it was trying to achieve.
And because drama drives engagement, those immediate, often quite negative gut reactions get pushed to the top. It's like the algorithm prefers the fight over the thoughtful discussion.
Okay, so connect that to our, everyday consumer culture. We're always rating things now.
Everything. Your Uber driver, your takeaway, the YouTube video you just watched.
Yeah. And has that trained us to feel like we have the right or even the obligation to judge absolutely everything we encounter, even art, even talent?
I think it has, to some extent. It's that customer is always right idea kind of bleeding into areas where it doesn't quite fit.
Right. Like you listen to a song or watch a movie, and if it doesn't immediately blow you away, you feel justified in just dismissing it, even if you have zero clue about the craft involved.
Exactly. There's a huge difference between experiencing something and understanding how it came to be. Eating an amazing meal doesn't suddenly make you a chef.
Huh. Good point.
But we forget that distinction.
And because what we consume, the music, the shows, the brands, becomes part of our identity in this capitalist culture. If something we invest our time or money in doesn't impress us, it almost feels like a personal affront or like we made a bad choice.
Which then feeds into these bigger cultural shifts we're seeing, like this move towards irony, cynicism.
Yeah, that feeling that in this totally saturated world, showing genuine, unadulterated excitement about something is somehow naive or even cringe.
Right. It's like it's cooler or safer to be detached. In this hyper-aware, constantly online world, putting genuine enthusiasm out there feels risky.
So people default to this kind of ironic distance, this attitude of nothing's really that amazing.
And it can be a shield, can't it? A way
Yeah.
to protect yourself. It feels less vulnerable to be the unimpressed critic than the person risking actual admiration. Maybe it's a reaction to just cultural overload, burnout.
And that leads to another slightly uncomfortable thought. Does seeing real, undeniable talent sometimes just make us feel weird, uneasy?
It's definitely something the sources explore, how witnessing someone else's exceptional skill can act like a mirror.
A mirror showing us.
Maybe reflecting back the effort we aren't making, or the potential we feel we aren't living up to, the sacrifices involved that maybe we aren't willing to make.
Oof. Yeah, that little nagging voice again. Wow, they're really doing it. They're creating, dedicating themselves, and I'm just watching.
And to sidestep that discomfort, it can feel easier to just downplay their talent. To say, oh, it's not that special, or they just got lucky.
It's a way to avoid confronting our own, I don't know, unused potential.
Could be. So if we pull these psychological threads together, we're seeing jealousy, maybe not fully understanding the struggle behind the success.
Right. Projection of our own stuff.
And this sort of resentment or unease about just being a spectator while others are creating.
But it feels bigger than just individual psychology too, right? There's this constant pressure, maybe from social media, to be amazing ourselves.
The highlight reel effect.
Yeah. And maybe just losing our sense of wonder because we're bombarded constantly. Plus this feedback loop where the loudest, most emotional opinions get amplified, not necessarily the wisest ones.
It's also crucial to remember this isn't entirely new. Criticizing greatness, dismissing pioneers. That's happened throughout history.
Oh, for sure. You think about someone like Socrates condemned just for asking questions, or Galileo challenging what everyone knew about the universe.
Van Gogh, totally ignored in his time. Emily Dickinson's poems, only really seen after she died. Even Nikola Tesla, a genius inventor, didn't exactly get showered with praise and riches.
And often looking back, the resistance seems to come from a similar place, doesn't it? Discomfort. These people were shaking things up, challenging norms, maybe making others feel small.
Exactly. They disrupted the status quo, and that often provokes a backlash.
But what is different now is the sheer scale and maybe the lack of gatekeepers.
That's a key distinction. In the past, you had institutions, the church, academia, established critics who sort of controlled the flow of ideas and judged merit. Now
You've got TikTok. Anyone can blast an opinion to millions instantly, regardless of expertise.
which brings us neatly to some specific psychological theories that help explain this more deeply. Social comparison theory, for instance.
Okay, break that down.
It basically says we figure out our own worth by comparing ourselves to others. So when someone else really shines, especially in an area we care about, it can feel like a direct hit to our self-esteem.
Which triggers those defensive reactions, dismissal, criticism.
Precisely. Think about scrolling Instagram as like a constant, curated stream of social comparison fuel.
Yeah, often leaving you feeling
Yeah.
less than. Okay, what else?
Then there's the Dunning-Kruger effect. You've probably heard of it.
Vaguely. Isn't it about people who don't know much thinking they know a lot?
That's the gist. Low-ability individuals often overestimate their own competence and, crucially, underestimate the competence of experts.
Ah, okay. So the less someone actually knows about, say, filmmaking.
The more confident they might feel declaring a critically acclaimed movie is trash or not real cinema.
Got it. And defensive attribution.
That's our tendency to blame successful people's achievements on external factors. Oh, they were just lucky, or it's all fake, or they had connections.
Why do we do that?
Because it protects us from having to acknowledge their hard work, their talent, their sacrifices. Because acknowledging that might force us to look at our own choices.
Right. Avoids the uncomfortable comparison.
Yeah.
And what about narcissistic injury? Sounds serious.
It doesn't necessarily mean clinical narcissism. It's more about when someone else's success feels like a personal insult or slight to someone with a fragile ego. Their achievement diminishes me.
Like the backlash against really young artists who achieve huge success. Billie Eilish winning all those Grammys is a good example.
Exactly. The immediate cries of industry plant. It's easier than acknowledging raw talent that emerged so young.
Okay, so these are the underlying psychological mechanics. How does our modern world pour fuel on this fire?
When the algorithm economy is a huge factor, platforms are designed for engagement and what engages us. Often it's conflict, strong opinions, outrage.
Controversy sells, basically, or at least it gets clicks.
It does. So hot takes and provocative opinions often get more visibility than nuanced, thoughtful analysis. Nuance doesn't go viral as easily.
And what about this idea of creator-consumer collapse?
That touches on the fact that so many people now label themselves content creators, but often there's a lack of real craft or discipline involved.
Okay.
And this can breed a strange kind of resentment towards those who do produce genuinely high-quality, well-crafted work. It's almost like a defensiveness. Well, what I do is content too, leading to negativity towards real excellence.
That's interesting. And then just the sheer amount of stuff.
Yeah.
The paradox of abundance.
Yeah, having access to virtually everything all the time, it can paradoxically make it harder to be impressed by anything. We get overwhelmed, desensitized, numb.
It becomes the default setting, almost. You mentioned Mozart earlier, criticized for being too complex back then.
Right, and today, you have these massive blockbuster movies, like the Marvel ones, huge cultural phenomena.
Dismissed as not real cinema.
Yeah.
Often by people who've never written a script or directed a scene.
Exactly. Or look at Taylor Swift again. Despite all the awards, the records, the cultural impact, she's still often reduced to, oh, she just writes breakup songs. It's a way to minimize this huge talent.
Even in sports, the armchair quarterback, yelling at the TV, criticizing elite professional athletes.
People who have dedicated their lives to reaching the absolute peak, being torn down by spectators, figures like Skip Bayless almost make a career out of it.
So what are the consequences of living in this kind of cynical, overly critical culture?
Well, for creators, it can be genuinely stifling. If you know that whatever you put out is likely to be met with instant backlash or ridicule, you might just play it safe.
Less risk-taking, less innovation.
Potentially, it can lead to blander, more formulaic art and entertainment because creators are afraid to fail publicly.
And what about just our conversations? Public discourse?
It devolves, doesn't it? Opinion gets mistaken for insight, loudness gets mistaken for authority. Thoughtful, nuanced voices get drowned out by the noise.
And for us, personally, just living day to day.
We lose something valuable, that constant state of being critical, of being unimpressed. It disconnects us from awe, from humility. We forget to appreciate the sheer effort and skill behind the things we consume so easily.
Okay, so it's not great.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? What can we actually do about it?
Well, the sources suggest it requires a conscious shift, actively choosing curiosity over criticism.
How does that look in practice?
It means asking how or why. Instead of just, is this good?
Yeah.
It means developing better media literacy, understanding the forces shaping what we see and how we react.
And valuing the act of creation more, not just judging the finished product.
Exactly. Championing creation over mere consumption, appreciating the process, the dedication, and trying to model better conversations ourselves. Give praise where it's due, offer critique thoughtfully, constructively.
There's a line in the material I liked. When everyone is a critic, the bravest act is to build something anyway.
That really sums it up. Okay, so another big piece of this puzzle is just volume. We're less impressed partly because we've just seen so much.
The sheer exposure, right?
Yeah.
The internet makes extraordinary things feel commonplace.
Totally. Think about it. Someone solves a Rubik's Cube blindfolded in seconds. Amazing. But you've probably seen 5 videos like that this week.
Or a 7-year-old with perfect pitch. Incredible talent, but okay, scroll past.
CGI explosions that would have blown our minds 20 years ago are just Tuesday?
So it's not necessarily that there aren't impressive things happening.
No. It's that our brain's baseline expectation has shifted because of the constant deluge. We're overstimulated, maybe even a bit jaded.
And this fire hose of content also messes with our expectations, doesn't it? Algorithms feed us exactly what they think we'll like.
Creating these little personalized bubbles, which subtly trains us to expect everything to cater perfectly to our tastes.
Yeah, like if a movie's pacing feels slightly off to me, or an album isn't exactly the sound I wanted from that artist, or a game doesn't innovate in the precise way I hoped.
We get impatient. We get critical. It's this weirdly specific form of entitlement bred by personalization and convenience cultures.
That entitlement thing, it feels key. Consumer culture teaches us, buy the thing, get the satisfaction.
And if you don't get the expected level of amazement from your purchase, whether it's a movie ticket or a streaming sub, then the product must be objectively flawed.
And not only flawed, but I have the right, maybe even the duty, to announce its flaws to the world.
Right. Which clashes with how art often works. Sometimes things need time to sink in, sometimes they challenge you, sometimes they aren't instantly gratifying. But that requires patience we might be losing.
And it fuels opinion inflation to this idea that my personal feeling about something carries the same weight as actual expertise or deep understanding.
It's true. Now, we should probably acknowledge A lot of this is kind of a first world problem, isn't it?
Meaning,
Meaning, if your primary focus is finding food or shelter, you're probably not spending a lot of time agonizing over whether the latest prestige TV drama lived up to the hype.
fair point. But does that make the feelings fake for those of us who are in more comfortable situations?
Not at all. Psychological dissatisfaction, boredom, a sense of emptiness, nihilism that's real, regardless of material comfort. Once basic needs are met, the search for meaning, for purpose, for connection, that becomes paramount.
And that's where the paradox comes in, maybe. We're drowning in stimulation, constantly scrolling for the next new thing.
But finding less and less that truly nourishes us, that gives us that sense of meaning. We're addicted to novelty, maybe, but numb to deeper significance.
Our attention spans are trained for the quick hit, the dopamine bump.
Not for the sustained engagement that often leads to genuine appreciation or understanding.
So when we feel unimpressed, what's really going on underneath? What are we actually feeling?
It could be a mix of things. Feeling overstimulated but underfed emotionally, plugged in constantly but disconnected, empowered as a consumer maybe, but lost as a potential creator.
It's hard to truly appreciate something deeply when your brain is already anticipating the next thing, the next notification, the next piece of content.
Exactly. The source material describes this negative cycle, calls it the loop.
Okay, what's the loop?
It goes like this. Expect magic, consume quickly, judge harshly, feel nothing,
Yeah.
move on expecting magic again, repeat.
Ouch. That sounds familiar. And draining.
It is. So the big question is, how do we break out of that loop?
And the answer seems to be intention. We have to be deliberate about it.
Yes. We need to consciously practice awe. It doesn't just happen passively anymore, not in this environment.
Okay, practice awe. How do we do that? Does it mean seeking out grand, spectacular things? Sunsets and mountains?
That helps, sure. But it's also about looking small. Noticing the details in everyday things, the veins on a leaf, the sound of a bird you always ignore, the symmetry in a building you walk past daily. Find the wonder in the mundane.
So, paying closer attention. What else?
Follow firsts. Try new things. Step outside your comfort zone, even in small ways. New experiences naturally spark more curiosity.
Listen with your whole body. I like that phrase. Like, really listen to music, don't just have it on. Read poetry out loud, feel the words.
Exactly. Immerse yourself. And maybe study legacy. Learn about the dedication, the decades of practice behind mastery in any field. It builds respect.
Borrow a child's lens.
Yeah.
Watch what fascinates kids or beginners in something. They haven't built up that jaded filter yet.
That's a great one. And the odd tip from the material is so simple but effective. Try replacing meh with how.
So instead of just dismissing something,
Ask yourself, how did they do that? How is this made? What skills were involved? It instantly shifts you from judgment to curiosity. Curiosity fuels reverence.
okay, practicing awe. What's the next step? Making things.
Yes. Shifting from being just a spectator to being a participant, even in small ways. This is huge for reclaiming humility and wonder.
Because when you try to do something, you realize how hard it is.
Precisely. It doesn't mean you have to aim for greatness. The advice is low stakes, high sincerity. Doodle, sing in the shower, write a journal entry, cook something new without the pressure to impress anyone.
Micro projects, like short-timed creative bursts.
Yeah, just to get the juices flowing, or try copying something you admire, replicate a drawing, learn a guitar riff. It helps you understand the mechanics behind it.
Join a community of builders. Connect with others who are making things. Share the process.
And try to make creation a small ritual. Integrate it somehow into your routine. The key making tip here is that creating builds deep respect for the invisible labor behind everything we consume.
You stop taking it for granted when you know what goes into it. Okay, so practice awe, make things. What else? Consume slower.
Yes. Speed kills meaning, essentially. We need to fight the urge to just skim and scroll.
How, like, actually listen to a full album instead of just skipping through tracks.
Exactly. Or read a book again, properly, not just summaries or reviews. Be more selective. Curate your intake. Don't just binge whatever the algorithm throws at you. Engage deeply with fewer things.
Unfollow the outrage merchants. Seek out people who build and teach instead.
Definitely helps. And maybe literally just one tab at a time. Focus fully on one piece of media without distractions.
The slow tip is about self-reflection, right? Ask yourself, did I really experience that or did I just glance at it? Can I recall specifics? If not, maybe I didn't truly engage.
A good gut check. And finally, we need to reframe our expectations.
Expectations of what we consume or of ourselves.
Both, really. Shift from constantly asking, is this good, which is often about ego and personal taste, to asking, What is this trying to do? What was the intention here?
Trying to understand it on its own terms.
Exactly.
Huh.
And accepting that not everything has to resonate with you personally. That's okay. Use reviews not just to confirm your biases, but to understand different perspectives or the creator's aims.
Celebrate partial successes. Like, find the shards of beauty even in something that isn't perfect overall.
Yes. And reject the myth of effortless genius. Acknowledge that even great creators struggle, experiment, and have off days. Perfection isn't the only standard.
I like the expectation tip. Approach content like a curious traveler, not a judgmental tourist. Be open to discovery, not just looking for flaws.
It's a much healthier way to engage. So instead of that negative doom scroll loop, expect, consume, judge, forget, repeat.
We aim for the awe loop.
Right. Which looks more like approach with curiosity, engage deeply, reflect creatively, respond with empathy. Let it change you.
And it sounds much better. More fulfilling.
It's a path back. Awe isn't dead, it's not lost. It's just waiting for us to rediscover it through more intentional engagement, more curiosity, maybe a bit more making, and a little less reflexive judgment.
So wrapping up this deep dive, we've covered a lot. From the psychology of why we dismiss things, to how social media and consumer culture shape our reactions, to the historical roots and modern amplifiers of this feeling of being, well, unimpressed.
And hopefully the core message that comes through is that while this feeling is real and understandable in our current environment, our capacity for awe and genuine appreciation isn't gone. It just requires conscious effort.
A shift in perspective, a change in habits, less passive consumption, more active engagement, and maybe even creation.
Exactly.
So maybe something for you, the listener, to think about this week. Cast your mind back. When was the last time something truly moved you, stopped you in your tracks? What were you doing? How were you engaging with it quickly, slowly, distractedly, fully? And just think, what one small change could you make this week to maybe cultivate a little bit more of that feeling?